Hi, Alfried. It's so lovely to have you here today. Thank you so much for coming. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing quite well in a busy time, which is always around before summer comes, and but I feel fine and I love what I do.
Well, this is a dream, isn't it? So, for those of us who do not, or people who are watching who do not know what you do and love what you do, how would you introduce yourself?
Well, first of all, I would say I am a family father with four children, grown-up children, and still with my wife since together since 50 years, and this is an amazing time, and it is still every day somehow a bit new between us. And this is maybe our phenomenological attitude, which shows us that we are constantly growing and changing, and our surroundings are different, and we are influenced, and we are in different moods, and how we deal with oneself and with the other under these constantly changing circumstances. This makes it very interesting even after 50 years. And so this is one side, and my connection with my children and grandchildren is really the heart of my life. But on the other side, I would say I I'm a loving psychotherapist. I like my work so much, and I like to work on anthropology, concept of the human being, understanding the processes, what helps us to remain healthy and to come to a good and meaningful, uh, successful, happy, fulfilling life. And when this is not working out, what is the reason? Why doesn't it go that way? How it could go, and to help people in that to get back on their track and to become more themselves and to make use of their capacities. This is what I really live for, and so all my life I was in this. I studied medicine for that, for having the physiological basis, the neurological basis. I studied psychology to have a better understanding of some processes, whereas I have to say the academic psychology did not contribute so much to a better understanding of the human being as I expected, but it was interesting. Nevertheless, I liked statistics and all these investigations. So it gives a broader horizon for the human being. So this is what I did. I love philosophy. Uh, I'm not a real philosopher, but I read a lot, and I was I was really in depth of existential philosophy, and it was influencing me when I was 17, 18. I was in a meaning crisis at that age. I was uh, really I was I experienced the absurdity of existence and struggled with it and got rid of it thanks to the lecture, to the reading and the reading of Viktor Frankl's books and then his lectures. And then I was in a collaboration with him, and but I was always phenomenological and very process oriented, whereas Frankl was more concept oriented and categorical. I was more dynamic, and this was a difference which led to a separation from Frankl, and to the development of a new um, new approach in existential psychotherapy. We call it existential analysis, the Viennese school of existential analysis, which is a term which Viktor Frankl coined in 1934 already to describe the theoretical background. Uh, and his practical background was logotherapy. Logos is meaning, purpose, meaning, sense. And and I said, I experienced that this is not enough to work with people. You can't just apply philosophy or philosophical anthropology. It needs an understanding of psychodynamics, of feelings, of the suffering. And so, based on this phenomenological approaching to the human being, I developed this existential analysis in the 80s and 90s and several methods in it. So, and then I was teaching it at universities and in seminars around the world. Uh, Now we have Viktor Frankl's logotherapy still being taught in many countries, and in parallel, existential analysis taught in we have in about a dozen countries, we have teaching societies, educational programs, which are all under the head of the International Society for Existential Analysis and Logotherapy, which has the seat in Vienna, is based in Vienna. That's a bit about me, and you ask me not as just a private person, but as a professional person. So I combined in my first answer both who am I, what was really moving me and interesting me in doing this work, and why I came into this, and my educational background, and a bit of the development.
I mean, first off, that has to be the most beautiful description of what phenomenology can be used for with your relationship. You're absolutely spot on. I know no one will ever trump that. Absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it shows a lot of the capacity of the innate, or innate is more in, uh, not the very exact term, the capacity which goes along with a phenomenological attitude. It brings so much uh, beauty and depth into my life, into my private life, in my family. Of course, we have sometimes difficulties and tensions and hassles and so on and misunderstandings, and I hurt them, and then they tell me and I apologize, and then I'm sad about what I did, and so it, it is so between humans. But it is, you know, I couldn't, I didn't know when I was 20 that I can find a partner with whom I'm living together every day when I'm not on travel. Um, that after, still after 50 years, there are so always new aspects and facets which enrich my life. And to work with clients and patients in that sense, it is so fulfilling. It is even, I work now for since I was 25. I'm now 70. So 45 years I work with clients and patients almost every day in all these years. Of course, I have teaching periods where it is reduced, but it's still interesting for me. It's, I feel life in it. I feel I can be myself. And this is because I do not apply a technique, but because I am personally present with my essence, with my own inner person, which means I'm personally there. It's me who is open, who wants to be touched, really touched, moved, who suffers with my patients and clients, who lives their life for the time span of 1 hour a bit. And so I'm rewarded because I lived hundreds of lives in my single life with my clients and patients. And I suffered so many different aspects of life. What suffered, and I enjoyed. I empathized in the successes, in the growth, in the new life which came up in my others whom I encounter and with whom I go. And this is the capacity of phenomenology. You know why? Phenomenology is simply the attitude of being ready, open, ready to be personally touched and to be humble enough and capable enough to set aside what is mine and to be there at the other. And the other is a complement to me. A complement is something what makes something total, entire, full. So I am totally my when I'm complemented by the other, and the human being needs the other. And phenomenology is the attitude where we can come as close as possible to to the essence of the you, using my own essence, being me, really me, surprisingly me, detecting how I am when I am with you and when I am touched by you, by that what leaps to me, what jumps to me when I listen to how the client or patient speaks about their problems and what they do. I see a relief. I see things which appear to me as touching, moving, important, not so much cognitively, but more out of my heart, of my sensing. This is phenomenology. And then I'm close to the person of the other. Then we are, um, I am enriched by the richness of your being, which is somehow squeezed in problematic situations. But I already see the shadow of it or the light of it uh, shining through the milky glass or so. I see it. And then my work is interesting because it is never a repetition, it is always new. In phenomenology, every day is new, every situation is new. And I'm very interested in learning, in knowing more, in seeing more, in especially becoming more. And so this helps me, and I think I'm in the right profession.
And what about for the people you really iterate the importance of the self here, and what about the people who are scared to be themselves?
They need people who slowly come closer to them and try to understand them. They need other people who go with them and see what were the experiences or ask and are interested in the experiences which block them, which scares them. In originally in my nature, I'm not born as a person who is a threat of myself. I'm born as a unity. The world may appear as a threat when I'm hungry and thirsty or cold and bedwetted or so. But I am born as being a friend to me, as one who goes with me through the entire life until the last breath, who can never separate, who can never, who should, or who somehow can never leave me alone, but who also shouldn't leave me alone, because by growing up, I become more and more free. I become so free that I can even detach from myself or leave me alone, because under the influence of other people, when they tell me, when you want an ice cream, you are a bad boy, and they influence me in a way that what I feel, what I want, what I do is wrong, is not correct, then I start believing it and I'm absorbing it, not so much cognitively, but much through the sensing and the feelings. And I get distorted. And then it may look to me through the eyes of the others, through the experience of the others, through my incapacity to talk with myself and to remain with myself. Through all that, I may appear to myself as a monster who cannot believe himself, trust himself, herself. I'm a man, I say him, me, myself. And then I'm full of distrust. I'm uh, anxious and I don't know myself. I was lucky in my life. I had very difficult times. I was in a boarding school, was very homesick. I suffered a lot, but in this time I learned to be with myself, like uh, like living in a snake's house. I could re- withdraw myself in, and I detected my inner world. And there it was so cozy. I could be with myself, speak with myself, resonate with myself. And this was enhanced when I was in the woods. I loved the trees. I climbed on the trees as a boy, and I felt kept. I didn't know what I experienced, but now I know what it was. But I experienced it and I absorbed it and I integrated it. And this gave me the capacity to withhold adverse situations in my life, to withhold them much better than at the beginning, because I always had, because I had this detected the resource of my being with myself and my trustworthiness, my fidelity, my my desire to be able to love myself. I wanted to be in a good relationship with myself. And when I had difficulties with myself, I worked on them. And sometimes I spoke with my friends or with an adult during the high school time and so. And later on, I had already my wife and as a girlfriend at that time. But this was one reason why our relationship lasted, because it was possible for both sides to exchange so openly. You asked me what about people who cannot trust themselves or be with themselves. My suggestion out of my experience, and now of course also out of my theoretical work and practical experience and studies, is, but it is coincides, is to have a good inner dialogue. and to work on the circumstances that this is possible, that sometimes go into the woods alone, listen to music, read a poem, just sit there on the meadow and look at the sky and let it flow. Let the simple fact of being there flow through you and connect with this fundamental being, this uh, ground which is given in all being, and just breathe your presence with yourself. And this helps me always to come closer to myself, because of course you, through the by the influences in every day, uh, I'm sometimes hurt and um, injured, and so, and I also lose myself. I feel attracted to this and I feel pushed away by that. And so I have to regain my inner presence. And in our work, we have a method in existential analysis is called a phenomenological method, personal existential analysis. This should help us, the intention is to help us to find back home, to become more really myself. When my father shouts at me and I'm in a reactive attitude or manner, and I'm losing myself and I'm doing and saying things out of my aggression and counter aggression, etc., I lose myself. And then it was good that in the situation I could protect myself. But then I have to work it through. There is a pain. I'm offended. And I have to find myself again. And I can find myself by talking with myself, by listening into myself, by letting flow my tears, taking up connection with my feelings and coming into a resonance with my feelings, giving myself the space of having time. And so I am personalizing my life. I am regaining my essence, my being personally me, and bring it into the situation. And then I can go up to my father and say, Father, sorry, this, sorry for this, what I said, what I did, but I also have to tell you, what you did with me, this was not correct to me. I felt it as in my conscience, in my ethical understanding, in my deep sensing, not categorically, in my personal deep sensing, this was not correct. And when I come like this, normally another human being resonates. Of course, if the other human being has borderline traits, it will maybe not always, it will not always be possible that we come into a dialogue. This can be hurting again, but this is the dealing with the pathology. But so, this is what we find so central in existential analysis, to become more who I can be, who, not simply who I am, because my being is in a constant development, in a constant becoming. Becoming is even the better, more precise term. I am what I am. I am every day becoming anew under the influence of all situations. Now I'm in the influence of the situation with you, and we are talking about this theme, and you bring the questions, and we talked before a bit. under this influence to really be myself, to listen at what speaks up in me, what gets a voice in me, what is voicing, what is speaking, what matters me, what honestly, authentically speaking, then as a result, I can speak out of that what is my center, what became my center again under the influence. Because the me, the I doesn't exist alone, as Martin Buber showed. He said the I exists only in the form of a I thou or a I it, always in connection. And so to be able to come to the I thou level, the essential level, not the functional level, but the essential level, I have to refer to my inner resonance and to speak out of it. And then I speak authentically. And I formed the shape of who I can be under this situation. And I am giving birth to myself, to my essence, to whom I really am, not my imagination, not how I want to appear, but to let me be in your presence. Then I'm authentic. And this is a main goal in existential analysis to help people to become more themselves in most possible situations.
I have just spent 3 years writing my existentially influenced thesis on the inner dialogue. And so I cannot say how fantastic it is to hear you say how important that is. And like you
Yeah,
said there, we hear often in society, I think we have an inner critic. But
yeah,
I have identified the fact, like you just said there, to kind of be your best friend.
yeah. The inner critic is not a dialogue, this is a discussion. A dialogue is never a discussion. A dialogue is an attitude of openness in which I am interested in looking at, listening at, see, and getting what really moves you. In a dialogue, the goal is to understand the other, which means to set back my own opinion, at the beginning at least, to understand. And understanding is clearly defined in existential analysis. It's not just having a feeling or, oh, yes, I understand. As in psychotherapy or counseling, it is a common phrase. I understand, because this sells good. And clients think that we have a relationship. No, understanding means I have a feeling and can see the value which matters you right now and motivates you to behave like this, to, to act, to decide what moves you. When I can see and grasp and sense what moves you, then I have a real understanding. And in a dialogue, which is the means of in an encounter, a dialogue needs encounter. Encounter means this openness to the thou, to the you. And the intention is simply tell me what moves you. Let me see. And maybe I can discern something more than you bring up in your words because your eyes look differently, your gestures, your mimic, your voice, your physical attitude, the pauses which you make. All this speaks to me as a phenomenologist, of course. And then I can somehow it shows up what is so essential in you. And this I want to come close. I cannot grasp it. It's just an asymptotic coming close to it, which will never meet the point and will never be, we can never have the security that this is what you mean. It's just, it's simply my impression and it remains my subjective impression, but this can come very close to you and you can feel understood. And then in a dialogue, I tell you what matters me. In a psychotherapeutic dialogue, of course, I don't speak about my private life, but I speak what touches me, what is appears to be essential in what I hear and listen. And then I tell this, and so we come in a dialogue in the exchange between me and you in our essences. This is dialogue. And in the dialogue is the same between me as a person, this deep resonance, and the I, who is the executional part of me, who makes the decision and who develops a will and executes the will. This is me. And the person behind says, oh, go on with this. This is very important. You are on the right track. This is the judging, evaluating, sensing depth in us, very personal, which we cannot grasp neither, nor I cannot grasp my own person. It comes up out of a depth which is going far beyond my understanding and knowledge. As Karl Jaspers once said, the human being is essentially more than they can know from themselves.
You see, you make me think how much time people spend encountering and engaging in others and in their pain and in world events and in this and in that, and how little time the everyday person probably spends in just encountering themselves, just having a dialogue with themselves, getting to understand themselves.
Exactly. And this is then the basis why how psychopathology can develop when we do not apply this inner dialogue. And we in existential analysis see in the inner dialogue the hotspot, the turning point for the healing process. The clients and patients have an opportunity to learn inner dialogue by copying the way how a therapist speaks with them. This is sometimes understanding, sometimes confronting, sometimes critical, but always in a caring and supportive attitude. And this, when the clients learn this to apply with themselves, then they can have a good inner dialogue and can oppose to the inner discussion with the commentators and the, the introjects and the bad voices and you will never succeed in your life, you will always be a stupid and a failure, etc. All these are also inner commentators, but this is not the voice of the person. And to find out what is the original, really personally well meant, friendly, caring, loving voice in me. For this, we sometimes need psychotherapy and to strengthen the back of the clients, to oppose to these commentators and to confront them and to face them and to speak against them and to give them answers and say, shut up. I know it so long that I should be a failure because you always told me an interject or something which I took over or which is like an arrow of an which hit me and is stuck in my body. And I to come to a personal position against it. This is what we do, for instance, in existential therapy, to find my personal position based on the inner dialogue, assisted by the outer dialogue with the therapist, to oppose to those commentators, to give more and more space to what to whom I really am, because all these learned or attributed roles and visions and commentators, this is not really me. Of course, I have a facade sometimes to the outside, and I am pushed into a role by others. And but who am I really? It can be very moving if you look into the eyes of your mom or dad, not as mom or dad, but if you ask yourself, who is this person? Is she or he, does he or he have a lucky life? Are they authentic? Are they really themselves? What was their life? And put them out, tear them out of their role, which we attribute. Of course, they are my dad and mom, my parents, and to see them as persons. An important step in the maturation of the personality.
So you believe that if you allow yourself to look in and to connect with your true self will be uh, will be compatible with you, with what you want, with what.
Absolutely. This is one reason, or maybe one meaning and purpose why we are born as individuals and not as clones. We are single persons, unique. Nobody is as I am. We have similarities, but we are different. And we are different, and in this singularity, uh, we we have an inner face towards ourselves. When we go to sleep in the evening, we close the eyes and say goodbye to the world. And then I'm only in my inner world. Only, mostly, 90%. Of course, I hear the noise around me and I feel the bed in which I'm laying. But mostly I'm centered on in my inner world. And in this inner world, I look at me in the sense of I feel myself. I feel how happy I am with myself. I feel according to the four dimensions of existence, which we describe in existential analysis. I feel how well can I be with myself? How much do I like myself and the way I behave? How much or how much can I esteem myself, appreciate myself in the way how I was today? If I cannot appreciate what I did today, my sleep will possibly be not so good. And how much am I well in embedded in the greater contexts of my life? And then I can really be with myself when all this goes together. That I have, when I have all these dimensions can be centered or brought together or bound together in the single term when when I feel inner an inner yes to me, a consent, when I feel an approval, when I feel congruence, when I feel peace, happiness, or as a result comes happiness and gratitude to be able to be. So this is, by the way, a definition which we give to existential analysis. to help people to live with more inner consent. In other words, consent means a felt yes, not a thought, not an expected. No, that I feel, oh yes, this resonates with me. This is it, what corresponds to me. Here I feel in harmony with me. Here I feel detected in my capacities, in my being. Here I it is my place to give my answer because it is needed and wanted. And it is something where I can see that I am good for something, which is another description of meaning, experiencing meaning. That's fine, yeah.
For those who are curious to explore existential ideas that are not familiar with them, how would you define existential ideas and how would you recommend that people can get involved with this philosophy?
Yeah, there are two things. One is the philosophy of existentialism, existential philosophy, uh, which gives a theoretical background. People who want to, and then of course they can read the books. There is plenty of literature of on existential philosophy properly, or on existential aspects in psychotherapies, etc. And we have a beautiful book, the Wiley's World Handbook of Existential Therapy, where you can read for weeks in it. But in practically speaking, uh, to bring people closer to the existential approach means to ask them the original existential question. Tell me what matters actually right now in your life. What matters? And then we have people who say, really nothing. And then we have the problem already on the table. Why isn't there a flower which touches you? Why don't you see the sunshine? Why don't you experience the pleasure of a nice rain, the freshness? Why doesn't this matter? They are already too numb, too adjusted, too bored. And then we ask them, but why are you so numbed? What happened? And so together in the dialogue, in the outer dialogue, we come closer to that what matters to them. And this may be the beginning of their inner dialogue. That they go on looking at themselves and start out of the inner dialogue, start going more into the outer dialogue. And then we are already in the midst of existential therapy, existential practiced philosophy, because existential philosophy and existential therapy turns around being able to be myself. To exist means I'm there. I'm not determined by the conditions under which I am. I'm raising myself above the conditions. Like in the evolution, the human being raised up from the four legs and is standing now on the two legs. As a human being, we have a much wider horizon and we have two legs free for decided activities, for actions. And so I exist when I detach myself from the conditions and I'm aware, we are mostly aware in our feelings, in our sensing, that I'm not determined by the situation. I may have a big problem with my partner, but I still can deal with it. There is a leeway, a space where I can act. The problem is there, a possible activity is on the other side, and me, I am in between. The problem doesn't determine what I have to do. I decide what I'm going to do, if I'm negating it or talking about it or looking for help, etc. This is existence, this is life. To be, to be myself under the given conditions. And to be myself, of course, means first to clarify, it means can I behave in a way that I can say yes to that what I do? Do I say yes to go for and look for help, or do I say yes to just um, delay the work on my problem? What is the best what I can do where I resonate with it and feel yes, I have to care for myself first before I start to work on that problem. For instance, this is inner consent, to look for my inner consent, my inner agreement to what I do. And then, if this is difficult and I don't find it, I have, we say in existential analysis, check the four dimensions of existence. Check if you can't find an inner consent because you have the feeling you can't bear that. It's simply, you can't accept it. It's simply too heavy, too much. You do not have the power to withstand. Check it. This is at the factual level. Check it uh, on the emotional level and on the level, on the axiological level, on the level of values. Is it worth? What is the value in it? The value which is in danger, the value you want to protect, you want to promote. And this, what do you feel it is good to talk about the problem? When you don't have the feeling that it has a value to talk about it, forget about it. You can't do it. Check the third dimension, the being yourself. Do you feel that it it is correct? It is right. It it corresponds to what is important to you, to what matters to you. Then go on and do that. And the fourth dimension, in the context in which this happens, does this have a meaning? Does this lead to something good at the end? Can I expect a good outcome? If I don't see a good outcome, it doesn't make sense and I'm not motivated to really do it. Or if I do it halfway forced to do it, then I will not be there with the full power. And then the result will be meager, will be low. I will not be very effective. This is how we deal with such situations.
Well, I am sadly aware of the time, and I'm aware that you have to go. But it it is so reassuring to hear that you have worked with so many people and that your external dialogue has perhaps become so many people's internal dialogue. Because I think if everybody could have some of these words in this tone spoken to them every night, then the world would be a very, very different place, Alfried.
Mm.
I hugely appreciate the hopeful messages and the wonderful messages that you've kindly shared with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Natalie. I really appreciate your uh, perception and your hope and love for the human beings, and that we all work together to make our world in which we live, our family, the world of our clients and patients and friends, to contribute to make it a bit better. It will never be ideal. It doesn't have to be ideal, but that we feel that we are in a process which has a good direction to a better world. Thank you for your engagement and your initiative. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.